This is a trade that may have flown a little under the radar at the end of last week, but Bryce Huff is headed from Philadelphia to San Francisco. The cost is a fifth round pick that can become a fourth round pick if Huff plays a bunch and produces and all of that. They're also splitting the salary. So this is, I mean, one thing I've always respected about the Eagles is that the Eagles now have sort of wiped the slate clean. They signed Bryce Huff last year to a 3-year, $51 million deal. They felt like it was a rare opportunity to get a guy who's an ascending young pass rusher, was coming off of a 10-sack season at a premium position, who was only available because the Jets had multiple first-round picks that they were trying to get on the field at the position in Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. So they got aggressive. They swung. They missed. And if you want to talk about why they missed, to me, this is pretty simple. I don't think he was a great fit for Vic Fangio's defense. Vic Fangio's defense, the edge players are guys who are playing standing up. They're dropping into coverage. They do rush a bunch, but they have to be able to do a bunch of different things. And Bryce Huff in a vacuum has to be going forward. Like, that's the whole thing with him, is that he is an aggressive upfield player. And so that limited what he was able to do in Vic Fangio's defense. Of course, injuries played into that as well. And when the Eagles look at the bigger picture of it, they got Jalix Hunt, who they're trying to get more reps to, a rookie last year. Of course, Nolan Smith came on at the end of last year. And Jihad Campbell's got some ability to play off the edge too, as a rookie. So they do feel good about the young group of players they have in there. Figure you're not going to gum up the works if you're not trying to fit Huff into that mix anymore. So I really respect this about the Eagles being able to move forward and basically look at the signing of Bryce Huff as a sunk cost in a championship season. Easier to do that, of course, when you've won a Super Bowl. And then on the Niners side of this, I mean, I think Robert Saleh, their new defensive coordinator, is a big factor here. He actually coached under Vic Fangio in Houston, and he coached Bryce Huff in New York from 2021 to 2024. So he's got a really good idea of what Bryce Huff is as a player, or he coached until 23. He's got a really good idea of Bryce Huff as a player. Not only that, he's got a good idea of why Bryce Huff didn't work in Philadelphia. So he's bringing in Bryce Huff. They've rebuilt their defensive line. It was Nick Bosa and not a whole lot else going into the offseason. Now they've spent 3 top 75 picks on defensive linemen, Mikael Williams, of course, being the headliner with a couple of defensive tackles after that. And now they're adding Bryce Huff into this mix, into a defense that is an excellent fit for him. They're doing it on the cheap. And they're handing him to Chris Kasarik, their defensive line coach, who has done this a million times with a million different pass rushers. They've got Yetur Gross-Matos there now, Arden Key. There are a ton of guys that they brought in there over the years that have really worked out as reclamation projects. Key is a good example of it, of a guy who came in and was a distressed asset, and they're able to get him back up on his feet and get him going, and he winds up getting paid somewhere else. Leonard Floyd was another example of a guy who they were able to bring in at a little bit of a lesser cost and get a great season out of. And so now the next guy becomes Bryce Huff. It really gives them a chance to be excellent on third down, with Mikael Williams potentially kicking inside. And then you've got Nick Bosa, of course, as your premier pass rusher. Bryce Huff as a real matchup problem on the other side. The Niners have set themselves up to be pretty good defensively when you consider all that they've lost. And losing Drake Greenlaw and Hufanga and Ward and Floyd and all these guys going out the door. I think they've done a nice job resetting. And again, I think it's a perfect spot for Huff to go back and have a renaissance season. So to me, like, this is a good job by the Eagles of taking on a sunk cost. It's a good job of the Niners of finding a distressed asset who could fit them. And it's a great spot for Huff to revive his career. So on paper, at least, it does look like this could be an everybody wins situation. If, of course, you're willing to concede that the 3-year, $51 million contract the Eagles did with Bryce Huff, that wasn't going to turn around. So it was time for Philly to move on.